welcome to Indexer Office Hours 38. Instead of hopping straight into the regular discussion topics, we're going to give Joseph the stage from Figment to talk about some of the latest news you've probably seen about the 𝗨𝗀𝗲 integrations, etc. Hi, Joseph. You got push to talk enabled, or?
Oh no, today's microphone day.
Yeah, today's not it, is it? For people's technical.
Oh
yeah, we
can
hear you
now.
Yeah, it's night microphones day today. For folks joining in right now, we've announced that the graph is going to be indexing 𝗨𝗲𝗂𝗧 ecosystem a few days ago. And so I think today what I wanted to do is give you a little bit more visibility on what that means and what it means for on the large scale for the graph. So after the announcement, we've been having a lot of talks with blockchain founders and builders in the 𝗨𝗲𝗂𝗧 ecosystem. And something that is really amazing to see and to be talking with these people is that there's a huge opportunity for the graph to be something very important in the 𝗨𝗲𝗂𝗧 ecosystem, because there's a lot of builders right now building their application-specific application-specific blockchains, their projects, and a lot of them will actually need indexing blockchain data. And it's something that we all know that it's not easy to do and not like something that we want to manage ourselves. So there's a huge opportunity for the graph to be helping these builders, making their life easier. And the second thing is that the 𝗨𝗲𝗂𝗧 ecosystem, the way it's built, it's like a hub, and a lot of blockchains are interconnected between them. And so one application could be using multiple different data from different blockchains. So the graph could actually be the engine power of this interchain connection between all these blockchains. And so it's something really amazing to see how much people are interested in the graph. And so the first step is actually in indexing the 𝗨𝗲𝗂𝗧 ecosystem is to start indexing the Tendermint layer. So Tendermint is like a consensus and networking layer. It's like a solution that packages the consensus and networking layer. And a lot of blockchains in the 𝗨𝗲𝗂𝗧 ecosystem are built on top of Tendermint. So we will be connecting to the Tendermint layer, and then after it, we do like some additional changes to get the chains that are built on the Tendermint layer. So of course, the first one, it's going to be the 𝗨𝗲𝗂𝗧 hub. And then afterwards, we're going to start adding a lot of blockchains in the 𝗨𝗲𝗂𝗧 ecosystem. Like for now, we still haven't like officially decided which one is going to be next, but there's amazing projects happening right now there, and we're going to be supporting these blockchains. I guess that's it, unless if someone have questions.
Somebody raised something to me earlier today, actually, and said that I think you were kind of getting to it at the beginning, that what we're doing here isn't, it's not, we market it as supporting a chain, but it's not just supporting a chain. It's basically presenting a toolkit to developers on that chain. And I saw something, I think it might have been on the Breakpoint, not the Breakpoint tweets, the 𝗨𝗲𝗂𝗧verse tweets about how Figment is trying to help onboard developers with like a 7-step plan or something.
Yeah, so what we did is that, so let's say that we added a new chain right now. We integrated the graph with a new chain. The first thing that we want to do actually is to help builders to know how to use the graph. And so when I was talking with these builders these last few days, they kind of understand the graph and what the graph does, but they don't understand how to actually start using the graph. So the first step actually, I think, is to educate people about how building a subgraph and how using a subgraph. And so that's what we did at Figment. We with Nether. So we created a learn pathway so developers could actually learn how to build a subgraph and how to use the graph, and they will be rewarded with the graph native token, the GRT. And because this is something like is really important for us to be doing right now, is to teach builders how to build subgraphs and how to use them as a first step.
Yeah, got it. Has anyone got any questions for Joseph, such as, maybe from our perspective, what it's going to mean as far as our stack goes, which I'm guessing involves Firehose and a bunch of other stuff to run?
Yeah, is there Firehose involvement here, Joseph? What does the actual application of a Cosmos block ingester look like?
Yeah, Firehose is involved, and what we're doing right now is that we're going to be using Firehose to integrate all the other chains. So it's going to be something like the same solution across multiple chains. Yeah, so we're going to be using semi-fast. We're not what we're doing right now is, as a first step to integrate this type of chains, is actually connecting with the developers on their end. And at some points, we're making some changes to their event bus, so it will be easier for Firehose to be integrated. But yeah, the solution right now that's being done is Firehose, yeah.
Cool. So I think a lot of indexers are probably involved in Tendermint-based projects. There's a lot of interesting incentivized test nights, either launching in the near future like Evmos, or recently finished or recently concluding like Agoric. If you were to, let's say an indexer is new to the Cosmos system, which of the chains would you recommend that they index as a sort of, which of the nodes, so like the different blockchains like Osmosis and the Cosmos Hub, which one would you recommend they deploy as a sort of practice for running a Tendermint-based node?
Yeah, so yesterday you've touched on a very good point. So yeah, yesterday I talked with someone from Evmos, and yeah, they've been having questions. They want to run some subgraphs on the testnet, and they want to learn how to build subgraphs. And I think we could be helping them to learn how to build subgraph and then to share this knowledge within their community. That's a cool project that they have going on right now. And yeah, also we're going to be talking with Agoric to see how we could integrate Agoric on that. And for your last question, I guess the first chain that we're going to be integrating it is Cosmos Hub. So people could, for the first time to run a Tendermint node, they're going to be playing with the Cosmos Hub node and testing. And then afterwards, when we start adding more chains, I think something that is going to be beneficial for our entire network is going to be the Osmosis. Because Osmosis is a decentralized exchange in the Cosmos ecosystem. And we are talking to them to, at some point, the graph be the powering all the data that Osmosis is getting on in the Cosmos ecosystem. So I guess it's going to be something similar like Uniswap and SushiSwap.
Thanks. Big fan of Osmosis. I'm interested very much in how they're doing things. Thanks, Joseph.
Yeah, thank you.
Is there any maybe you don't know or you can't actually say yet, but I'm guessing now that you've got this support in place, you're going to be working on that. But I'm wondering if you're kind of also branching out to maybe the next thing, the next chain, and or do you have any kind of timeline when this might start affecting us on mainnet?
Yeah, so we are already started talking to the chains that we want to integrate next. And as I was saying now, is like what's important for us to do is when we want to integrate a new chain to see how much on their end they are willing to help. So some small changes on their side could help a lot for Firehose to be integrated and for everything like the data ingestion being easier. So that's something that we're looking forward. And timeline-wise, I think in the next couple of weeks, we're gonna have the Tendermint node up and running, and then afterwards, it's easier and much faster to add new chains like Cosmos Hub or the others. It's just like some additional lines of code to integrate them.
Right, I see.
Is it very different, Joseph, trying to deploy data products or indexing products to these chains where maybe they only have one client rather than something like Ethereum, which has many?
Yeah, it's kind of different, but there's some steps that are the same, and this is like helping us to learn as we go. But yeah, every chain is like a news story. And let's say that you like next, at some point we want to do Polkadot. And Polkadot, and it's the kind of the same philosophy as Cosmos, that it's built on top of Substrate, the same as Tendermint, but still the way to connect to these chains are something completely different. And there isn't any much documentation, so we have to go and directly talk to their developers, ask them questions, and see where the documentation is. So yeah, every chain is a new experience at some point.
Does anybody else have any questions for Joseph about this integration or the future?
I have a question. Can you hear me?
Yep.
So my question is, I know Firehose is going to start taking over as we deploy onto other chains and stuff. But what is it going to look like, let's say, when the first chain, whether it be Cosmo or Polkadot or whatever it may be, are we going to be running our same stack and then Firehose on top of it to take care of Cosmos? And then is that at some point Firehose going to be taking over the Ethereum chain and everything is going to be done through Firehose? Or is there going to be like an intermediary time where we're running our normal stack and Firehose?
I think for the short term, we're going to be running both, but the idea is to be Firehose. I'm not very sure on that. We've been having this conversation these last few days. I think, Chris, you might have more insight on that.
Hey, yeah, sure. I suppose in theory, if you didn't want to index Ethereum subgraphs at all, and you only wanted to say index, Solana or, pick one of the non-EVM chains that we'll be supporting, then you would still need an Ethereum node, although it could just be a full node, just for the purposes of the protocol software like indexer agent actually being able to interact with the protocol contracts on chain. But if you weren't indexing Ethereum, you wouldn't need, the archive node and, the kind of standard Ethereum setup. I think practically though, Ethereum is likely to be the dominant chain in terms of demand for subgraphs and queries. So most indexes will continue to run the RPC-based data ingestion strategy for Ethereum and then leverage Firehose for other chains. In the long term, I think it's likely that most indexers will just run pure Firehose. There is some interesting nuance or detail there, because if we talk about the Firehose specifically for Ethereum, it has quite a number of capabilities that are impossible with the pure RPC ingester. Without going too deep, RPC does this thing called state rounding when you query for blocks, which means that ETH calls are actually return inaccurate data. Firehose can also give us all sorts of things like state diffs and, storage diffs and all sorts of really cool stuff. So I think the long-term roadmap is likely that Ethereum RPC-based ingestion and Firehose ingestion exist side by side for some time. There will likely be actually a subgraph manifest level distinction at some point, in order for subgraphs to unlock the capabilities that the Firehose provides beyond RPC. But subgraphs will actually need to opt into that. And I think in the very long term, the Ethereum Firehose will essentially support native Firehose based indexing. And it will also be able to run in what you might call compatibility mode, where it kind of seeks to imitate the limitations of the RPC-based approach, but it would allow you to run, the Firehose for Ethereum ingestion and support both subgraphs who were written for the RPC interface as well as ones that natively target the Firehose.
Works for me.
Just to add to that, I think at some point it's probably worth us having a look or reviewing on mean, either it would be on index or office hours or a separate session, just so people can get a bit of a feel for what the actual infrastructure would look like when you're running the fire hose setup, right? There's some good diagrams that Alex has done around. If you have a look on the forums at his original introducing the fire hose post, there's a good diagram there. But I think it's probably worth us getting into the practicalities of it at some point in some kind of working session, maybe with Alexandra, sometime in the future, prior to any of this becoming sort of mainnet ready, so that people at least have the infrastructure available to support the needs of the flat files that we're going to end up having coming out of our clients.
I'm quite interested to see the outcome of Oliver's indexer survey that he put out a while ago as well. Because from my understanding, one of the purposes of that is to kind of get a feel for how many indexers are ready or willing to, go on these new networks. And I think Chris said something there that, everyone's probably going to continue to run Ethereum as an indexer. But when you start to think about other chains, maybe not so much Cosmos, but something like Solana that has quite high requirements just to have a node running on it. And obviously not currently the adoption that Ethereum has, because we're already there. I'm wondering where the equilibrium is going to land on each of these networks as far as indexer uptake goes.
Yeah, I think that's a very good question. And if we're still in the phase where, like a bootstrap phase, where the indexer rewards are sort of the incentive to run an indexer, that's potentially not enough to entice indexers onto other chains, right? The thing that would entice indexers onto other chains, apart from synthetic incentives, is knowing that there's query business there for us to serve.
I think the curation market is going to be a major driver there. And unfortunately, I don't think that story is particularly good for smaller indexers. But when subgraphs on other networks begin to launch, we will start to see curation signaling begin to divert away from Ethereum, even if that's at a reasonably small scale. And that will directly dilute indexing rewards that go to indexers on Ethereum. So there will be a potentially quite significant drop in indexing rewards for Ethereum indexing, and that might put some smaller indexes completely out of business, because trying to index something like Solana is just completely infeasible. Or for indexers that are in a position to afford that kind of endeavor, yeah, those shifting incentives would maybe cause them to undertake that.
Yeah, curation, I guess, would have to lead the incentives in lieu of query traffic. But I'm wondering what that's going to look like now you mention it.
Yeah, I mean, in theory, like, curators should be moving signal based on the expectation of query volume, and I don't think that we're going to see an explosion of query volume on these other chains before Ethereum. But the market is irrational, and I fully expect apes to ape when some of these other networks launch, and yeah, that will just be dilutive for Ethereum.
Something to mention also that you're saying about Solana, that it's really hard to index, and people that are using today RPC nodes on Solana are literally managing something really hard. And so I guess it's going to be a lot of demand for the graph on Solana. I don't know how it's going to look like in query fees, but I think there's once the graph integrates Solana and people could use it, there's going to be a huge demand for it, because meeting these people here these last few days, they've been all repeating the same thing. It's so hard to manage a Solana RPC node or to access Solana data. So we might be giving them something that they really, really need.
I don't think you totally agree, Joseph, and it's super exciting for our ecosystem to support these other chains. I do think that just like the scale of Solana in particular is completely staggering, and it's quite scary to think that, you know, these like massive machines that are required to run Solana validators aren't even maintaining any kind of archival state. They're just managing, you know, like present state. They're effectively full nodes. So yeah, I mean, by some early reports, you know, you're talking about many terabytes of data a week being generated by the Solana firehose. So yeah, it's going to be interesting to say the least.
But
Can
that
I-
brings me to another question on our current EVM chains. We do need archive nodes, but my understanding is on the new chains that are supported through Firehose, this requirement is being stripped by not allowing certain calls and sort of steering developers into a direction that this isn't needed anymore. If I count a few things that I think one of the Get Core developers was asking out loud on Twitter, should we even keep archive mode? If I see how insane a BSC archive node is coming, and how I see the same behavior slowly trickling into these other chains that are, the moment that these other chains take up significant volume, they might go down the same path. So I definitely have a question of, okay, what are we going to do about this need for archive nodes? Is there a path forward that we can sort of strip that requirement out?
It's already being pulled out with Firehose, from my understanding.
It's not.
Yeah, there's a bit of nuance. So the major kind of sticking factor for EVM chains is ETH calls. So anytime a subgraph uses an ETH call to query the state of a contract as part of indexing, like that subgraph, even once we have the firehose, will still need access to an archive node to be able to query that historical state. Now, but that's kind of the short-ish term firehose roadmap. And you know, maybe just to fill out the context a little bit, today obviously we run these huge archive nodes because all of the data that we get out is via RPC. Once we run Firehose enabled ETH nodes, essentially all of the data, like, you know, scanning over blocks and logs and all of that stuff just becomes these flat files that we can, you know, do parallel streams over, and we don't really need the ETH node to get that data. And by consequence, you know, also to generate that data, we just need to run a full node, because the way the instrumentation works is like as the node is processing through transactions, it kind of spits out all of the like intermediary data and state that is created as the node operates. So technically that will just need to be a full node, because all it needs to do is run transactions, and all of the, you know, Firehose goodness is just generated as a side effect. But the sticky point is, of course, the ETH calls, and as long as a subgraph makes ETH calls, it will need archive node access. In the long term, and you know, I'm not aware of this being on any committed timeline, but as I said before, the Firehose has quite a strong set of capabilities that extend far beyond RPC. It's far superior in many respects, and one of them is that on a internal call by internal call basis, like at the most granular level, the data that comes out of the Firehose includes state diffs. So you can really see exactly how the state of you know, the EVM and of the chain is shifting over time. And at least in theory, what this will allow us to do is, you can imagine that as a subgraph is kind of being indexed, and that process is happening over the Firehose stream, the majority of the data that it needs will just be in the logs and block data that is in the stream. But when it makes a call, when it makes an ETH call, in theory, because we have the state diffs in stream, right? Like we're already streaming that data into GraphNode, you could actually take those state diffs and load them into an EVM instance, effectively recreating the state of the EVM at that precise moment in time. And then you can effectively do an ETH call, right? It's not an RPC call and it's not over the network, but an ETH call is really just an EVM state query. You can do that in process. And every time you need to make an ETH call, you basically use that surrounding context in the stream, all of those state diffs, to recreate the state of the EVM at that precise moment, query it, and then move on. So in the very long term, there is a pattern that would allow us to completely get rid of archive nodes and also just significantly increase the performance of subgraphs that depend on ETH calls. Sorry, that was a bit long-winded.
No, that's good. That's a lot more color than I had before. The long and short of it, that is, from my understanding, was what you were alluding to at the beginning, which was all the data was just going to be flattened and no more archival required. But
do you have any idea on the timeline? I guess no.
No.
Yeah, no idea on the timeline. Personally, my strategy is going to be most likely to run Firehose-enabled nodes that are also archive nodes. So, my existing setup, but they'll be generating this Firehose data stream, which will, then be used by the Firehose block stream to handle all of the kind of non-EVM call data dependencies, and then I'll have the network of nodes for ETH calls if required.
Yeah, I guess this is a point that's more pertinent on something like 𝗀𝗃 deals with his BSC. One upside that we've got right now is at least we can start to move to 𝗨𝗀𝗃 and have a little less pen from our archivals, at least on ETH.
We can't currently use 𝗨𝗃𝗀𝗃 for generating the Firehose, though, right? It's Geth-based instrumentation.
That's correct.
Does anyone know if there's any plans to make the instruments to bring the instrumentation to other clients? It's like I'm syncing a Geth archive node now, and it's like maybe 1 million block from the chain head, and it's like, I don't know, 7 terabytes.
Yeah, I think mine's 8.4, 8.5 when I checked recently.
If we were able to instrument turbo Geth nodes at 1.5, 1.8 terabytes, whatever it is right now, you could fit many more of those with Firehose on some infrastructure than you could an 8 terabyte node that's going to grow. I don't know what the growth pattern's like, probably similar to Open Ethereum, right, on a Geth node.
Yeah, well, if we're going to be, dependent on 𝗨𝗃𝗀𝗃 as like canonical as far as tracing goes, then it seems like a no-brainer that we should be able to go full native 𝗨𝗃𝗀 dependent,
Yeah,
Hey, y'all.
really
I know there is an intention from Streaming Fast to instrument the 𝗨𝗃𝗀, or previously known as TurboGeth node. I don't think that's like at the top of their list of things they're working on right now, but I have heard from their team that it really doesn't take a huge amount of time for them to do this instrumentation process. So that'll be super exciting once we can converge onto 𝗨𝗃𝗀𝗃.
The holy grail, right, I imagine, correct me if I'm wrong, is to have this instrumentation baked into the actual client. So the clients would come with,
Yeah, absolutely.
whatever to allow
Firehose. Amazing to upstream this into the client, and hopefully we can get there and start, continuing to work closely with some of these teams. We do have a decent relationship with the 𝗨𝗃𝗀𝗃 team, and we'll continue to hope to grow that.
So, Joseph, I know you had to head off, you told me. I don't know if anyone's got any other questions on the original topic for Joe before he heads off. Nope. Okay, then.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for your help, Joe. See you later.
Bye.
Bye, guys.
Okay, yeah, so we just had to dive straight into that because we had another meeting to get to. This week on the regular spots, index of tooling, there's nothing to talk about. I did actually have somewhat an RFP contributor lined up to come on, but he's had a change of plans, so that has to wait another week. Repo Watch, there's nothing to talk about, and on Node Watch, all that there really is to talk about is new releases for 𝗨𝗂𝗂 and 𝗨𝗂𝗂𝗧 that are for the upcoming hard fork in 4 weeks. And surprisingly, also an update for Open Ethereum for this. From my understanding, it was end of life and they'd abandoned it and moved all their efforts to 𝗨𝗂𝗂𝗧, but it seems they're trying to just keep that old beast ticking along a little bit longer. So anyone that's dragging their feet on 𝗨𝗂𝗂𝗧, which probably shouldn't be, you're probably in luck and you don't have to fret over Christmas. Yeah, that's about it for that. The only other things I wanted to point out was a couple of things I saw on the forum, which was Penn's post for this month in indexing. I was going to post that last week, but we couldn't make the call. And a JIP related to the near indexing, which was announced a few weeks ago.
On the topic of 𝗨𝗂𝗂𝗧, I've noticed some quite weird behavior on one of our machines. So what I essentially did was select the first 50 subgraphs in terms of like signal and start syncing them off chain, and quite a few of them are. So for example, like it keeps going, it syncs them. Like after 30 minutes or so, the sync speed just drops to absolute zero for like 90% of the subgraphs that are still syncing, and everything else grinds to a halt. I'm not entirely sure if it's 𝗨𝗂𝗂𝗧 related, because I think we're running quite some old version of 𝗨𝗂𝗂𝗧. When I say old, it's like a month old. It's not a year old, but still. Which is very, very weird behavior. So what I did with that is basically set up a cron job and restart the index nodes every like 20 or 30 minutes just to have it keep going. But like, I'm very interested in like seeing how fucked that data is compared to like on-chain POIs, because this was supposed to be our one of our backups, and hopefully it's not hopefully it's not dead, but yeah.
Yeah, that's weird. So restarting the index nodes is what fixes that?
Yeah, so when I restart index nodes, everything else starts syncing at much higher speeds. When I say everything, I mean everything, but like there's a couple of subgraphs that go absolutely bonkers on sync speed, like 17k blocks per minute or something like that, and then they drop. But like these behaviors like present to all of the subgraphs, not only those that have like go really bonkers. So at least at the very least, there's a 2x improvement in sync speed when I restart them for like at least 20 minutes or so, and then they drop to zero, most of them. I was trying to get SushiSwap in sync to Chainhead just to check the POIs on that machine. So I restarted the nodes once. I said like, okay, it's like 2 days behind, and then I'm waiting a bit, and then I checked and it didn't move, so I restarted again, and I was like, what the hell is what was happening? So I just realized that this behavior was like present for a while, and the thing is like all of the IO, like the disk utilization, basically I think goes to 𝗨𝗂𝗂𝗧, specifically the RPCs. We run 2 on the same machine just for the sake of it, but yeah, we have 2 index nodes and 2 𝗨𝗂𝗂𝗧 RPCs, and yeah, it's like really weird behavior. And it's not even like all the 50 subgraphs are syncing. At least 40 of them are up to Chainhead. So it's only like 8 to something, 10-ish, whatever, that are still syncing. 4 of them are completely broken because there's a problem with 𝗟𝗀𝗀𝗳. They don't have state data for Genesis block. So 𝗟𝗀𝗀𝗳 cannot start those subgraphs. The discussion in, I think it was the POI channel, Subgraph Health, where I posted 4 subgraph links. They're all kind of similar to each other with missing Genesis data.
I haven't seen that on any subgraphs. I mean, is that because a subgraph doesn't specify a start block?
Yes, correct,
It's-
correct. They don't have start blocks, so whenever it tries to get Genesis data from 𝗟𝗀𝗀𝗳, it doesn't have it any, and yeah, they can't start syncing. So when you connect them to Geth, I'm not entirely sure of Geth, but if you connect them to Open Ethereum, they do work.
Have you, you say you've got 2 RPC endpoints on one, it's like on one Turbo Geth instance.
Yes.
Are you giving each index node a discrete
Yes.
RPC endpoint? So it's not like they're both they don't have both
Yes.
defined on each node. Okay.
Yeah. I was just trying to see if that improves anything. It was just me experimenting with all this shit.
Have you tried to? I'm presuming when you're restarting these index nodes, it starts to hammer the disks, accessing the data from 𝗟𝗀𝗀𝗳. I was wondering if you've tried to kind of run DD or something else to kind of saturate the I/O on your disk, because something I've noticed from flash-based storage, especially non-enterprise drives, is there's kind of like a limit will hit on the internal cache, and then the speed that it'll return at will go down by half or a quarter or something like this. I'm wondering if you're running into something like that.
No, I have not.
You can use FIO if you want to try benchmarking with FIO. You can negate that with FIO in a benchmark test between 2 nodes.
Just to see if the bottleneck exists on some part of your hardware, might be an idea, just to simulate something that does the same thing without doing the same thing, if that makes sense.
One thing I haven't checked was the logs for all the subgraphs, because I have them. I had trace turned on just to particularly investigate on those 4 particular subgraphs I weren't syncing, but I didn't check if something happens with all those subgraphs of like 20 minutes or so that makes them stop syncing, or like if there are like any failed calls or whatnot. But like if I check my Grafana dashboard, there's nothing in there that might tell that there's any problems with the RPCs themselves, or like and also one other probably interesting topic is that whenever I restart Postgres, it starts eating up at least 30% of CPU utilization over that node, and we're talking about a 12-core, 24-thread machine, Ryzen 9. So it's quite capable of handling 8 subgraphs that are syncing, or 7, right? That are still syncing. I mean, everything else is just keeping up to chain head, which is not that big of a deal, right?
Do you do any Postgres config tuning, or do you just use
it's just default everything.
Okay.
Yeah, it's super weird. I'm trying to debug this probably the next couple of days, and yeah, if I manage to find anything, we can chat about this in the next office hours. But I was curious if there's anyone else having the same issues with this, or like have been experimenting with 𝗟𝗀𝗀𝗳, given that it's well, up until now, Open Ethereum was supposed to be deprecated.
Yeah, I would say if nobody else has run into this yet, yeah, maybe take a step back and kind of do some stress testing on certain parts of your infra, just to see if you could be hitting something. Because I found that caching issue really hard to, debug, as it were, because it really wasn't obvious. Any metrics I was looking at wasn't making it obvious until I just stressed it over a prolonged period and eventually hit that internal cache limit.
Interesting. Chris, maybe you can help me with this maybe next week.
Yeah, happy to do the kind of
You don't sound that happy.
bashing your head against the wall until you break it down. But yeah, I feel like you encounter Aragon issues a lot more frequently than me. It's mostly been smooth sailing. But yeah, we can. I've got some FIO commands saved in my Notion to do like that kind of stress testing. To me, it does feel like that's the right area to look. Or yeah, you know, trying to sync so many subgraphs at the same time. I also imagine that you might get into trouble with Postgres. Just
Yeah, but like, you
trying
know, the
to
problem is
sync that much data.
the problem is I'm not trying to sync that many at the same time. I mean, most of them, like in 80 or 90% of them are in sync. You just need to digest one block every like 14 seconds. It's not a big problem. Even like if you're talking about, I don't know, a few Uniswaps, for example, there's still not enough disk saturation to like justify having everything at 100% disk IO usage, right? I guess. I don't know. We're talking just about 8 or 7 subgraphs that are still syncing, right?
Yeah, no idea. Good luck. And yeah, happy to help.
All right, cool.
Okay, Derek wanted to speak about something. I didn't really want to palm him off because last time a couple of weeks ago, he wanted to say something from his side, and he had an office fire or something weird like that was going on. I just wrote to him in chat. But maybe in the meantime, Oliver could talk about some GIP updates that he wants to.
Yeah, thanks, Gary. So we have a number of GIPs out there in the forum, and a couple of them we have received unanimously positive responses back. One is GIP 18, which is the subgraph ownership transfer. And the other one is GIP 19, which saves gas when initializing subgraph deployment, saves on the usage about 60% or so. So both of them have received good responses back. And what we can do there with the governance process, since it's really it's just a net positive impact that we have for both of these types of GIPs, and we have the ability to move straight to council voting, which is what we are going to do with these shortly. So if there's anything anyone has any concerns about, please raise it in the forum. Otherwise, we're going to go straight to council voting on those two. And also, since I'm talking right now, reminder again for the indexer survey. It's going to be open for another week, as we're going to close it up at next week, Monday, I believe.
Cheers, Oliver. Yeah, I kind of speculated a little earlier, but I'm guessing that these surveys are probably being used to gauge the readiness of or willingness of indexers to make a move on some of these newly announced integrations and maybe future ones. Or is there more you can tell us about the aims of this survey?
Yeah, so as far as the purpose of this, you've seen recent announcements coming out with Near, Solana, Cosmos. We have questions going into these sort of topics, and part of that is for us to understand who's got experience in these networks already on these blockchains, and where we can possibly tap into just understanding readiness perspective. We also have questions around geographical coverage, so it's really better understanding how our index network is. But most importantly, really, it's about getting feedback on what is the indexer experience for you today. And that is something that we want to use to inform the roadmap for future protocol enhancements as well. So it's really an opportunity to help shaping the roadmap in the future for every indexer here.
Yeah, got it. Yeah, I feel like something like the geo distribution part is maybe a chicken and an egg situation, as until queries start flowing through the network more. But I suppose I've done the survey, and it does actually touch upon future plans, so that's also good to note down. So Derek, you there? You want to touch upon?
Yep, I'm here. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yep.
Perfect. I wanted to jump in, I think it was last week, but then I got, there was a problem in the office and I had to jump off, so I wasn't able to do that. But kind of from my curator role and just as a, I don't know, general public relations between curators and indexers, just to keep you guys apprised on some of the things that we're doing now. We had a curator that built a tool that allows us to check the billing smart contract on Polygon. So now we can start kind of keeping track of different publishers who have also added GRT into the billing smart contract, just as an analytics point of like, okay, is this person at least prepared to query the subgraph that they published? So that's one thing that we're keeping an eye on, and we're also getting a couple other pretty rad metrics for the protocol overall, just to see how many consumers exist, how many people have GRT in their account, how many people are getting tokens pulled from the smart contract, etc. So we're improving our analytics, so hopefully you guys are getting smarter and smarter signal for what the protocol is seeing. So I just wanted to, I guess, pass that along as a point of good news and improvement. And then separate to that, yesterday Rocket Pool had its launch, and the subgraph was featured because it's driving the main metrics page for Rocket Pool. And so it was featured during the launch party. You know, everyone thought it was really good that the Rocket Pool team is able to decentralize Ethereum 2 staking, and they've got an analytics page that's leveraging decentralized data. So that was very well received on their side of the community. So I thought I'd pass that along too.
Has there been much uptake with indexes from this, or they run it locally? I haven't actually noticed myself. I saw you tweet about it though.
I didn't quite hear your question.
This has been put on mainnet and is being indexed by indexers now, or?
Yep, that's right. We ran into a query issue at the very beginning, and so we were part of that was just my failure to whitelist all of the needed domains. So we got that debugged and a couple of points, but it is on the mainnet, and so we'll be using that for our queries. And then this was something that was produced by me and then one of the Rocket Pool community members to build the Rocket Pool metrics page. But I'll be reaching out to and the Rocket Pool teams. They're reaching out to other wallets that want to integrate their token, and so we're providing the open API for them to be able to use with their wallet users and all of that. So yeah.
I was just wondering because Lido, another liquid staking solution, they also power one of their new dashboards showing stakers their returns with a subgraph, but I think they're self-indexing this at the moment. But yeah, I know. I asked because I know Rocket Pool is very, very strongly tilted to, be as decentralized as possible. So I just wondered, but it doesn't surprise me that they're straight onto mainnet.
Yeah.
There's 3 million GRT worth of allocation before you go over optimization on that, if anybody's interested in indexing it.
8 on now. So we're about 10 minutes from the end. Like I said, my RFP guy didn't turn up, so we're running a little thin on content. Has anybody got anything they'd like to discuss still?
I did want to ask about, I know you mentioned it, Payne, about some of those subgraphs where they just don't start on the first block if you're pointed at Aragon. Is there like an issue? Like, do you know if the Aragon devs are aware? Like, how hard is it to fix that? Because it would be nice to be able to index some of these.
Yeah, I'm going to sync up with Leo this week, figure out exactly what's needed, and then we can talk with the Aragon devs and fix it. It should be an easy fix, I guess. But the problem is, for this fix to be applied, I reckon we need to resync the whole Aragon chain again. Since it's like a Genesis block, but it takes 3 days. It's not a big of a deal.
All right, cool.
I think that the chances are pretty high that they can apply a database migration.
Oh, right, that's true.
I think a resync is unlikely.
Yeah, fair enough.
Fingers
I don't know
crossed.
that. Yeah.
Ford, are you there?
Here I am.
Hello. Yeah, I wanted to ask you or grill you, depending on how you look at it, on something. So we were talking. I think we had a DM the other day about some features coming to GraphNode that is going to allow you to close unbroken subgraphs without manually closing. Could you just tell me how this is going to work? Because I think I got a bit lost in the weeds. Is this going to basically make GraphNode automatically submit the last good POI, or is there another mechanism in place there?
Sure, yeah. So that I believe is landed on GraphNode Master, but it's not in a tagged release yet. So that should be coming out with the next release, if I'm not mistaken. Basically, the goal of that is to get it in line with the current state of the arbitration charter, so we can ratify that. And if you guys remember, in the arbitration charter, on a broken subgraph, you may continue to sync it, especially if there are queries and signal on it. But of course, you're not going to, at least in the past, have a valid POI continuing forward after the failure. So you have to do some manual work to go find the last valid POI and submit that when you close an allocation. So with the update, POIs will still continue to be produced after a subgraph fails. So the POIs will be different. They'll combine like the latest block number. But a POI at that point will basically attest to that failure and that you're at the latest block with syncing of just blocks from the chain. And so then we can get consensus on the network on failures. And this will make it so the indexer agent, or if you're doing things manually, will require no, looking back in time to find the valid POI. You can just grab it for as if it's a normal running syncing subgraph and close allocations typically. Does that make sense?
Yeah. One question I had though, is this going to be tied to epoch? So is this going to be like first block of current epoch or last good, something like that?
We'll still have the same scheme for closing allocations where you close it for the first block of the epoch or the previous epoch.
The reason I ask is because I'm wondering, there's an open dispute on this as well. How is this going to work if the bad block came before epoch 1 for graph?
Interesting. So a subgraph that has data before the network was launched?
Yes. There's an open dispute for this right now.
And also a failure on that data?
Yeah.
That's a good question. I don't have a really clean answer to that right away.
I mean, I know maybe I got you on the back foot, and I didn't mean to, but it's just something that came to my mind.
I don't have a good answer to that. That's something I would have to think about more and maybe have some discussion with you guys. But yeah, so for a block that's before the network started, there is no concept of graph network epoch, so there's no like start block for the epoch.
Yeah.
So in that case, I would probably have special case it and just assume epochs before and do like an estimate based on epochs last a certain number of blocks, so you can still extrapolate backwards.
Yeah, that's what the disputee did. They just kind of calculated backwards by 6646 blocks and did like epoch minus 160 or whatever it ended up being, and calculated their first block based on that. But if this is being automated through GraphNode, then I guess this needs to be accounted for because it's going to happen.
So in the GraphNode, this won't be a problem as much because that'll have that failure block. But POIs, you can still produce a POI for the latest block. It'll basically just be a hash of that failure POI plus the latest block. So you don't have to kind of extrapolate backwards. You'll have that failure, and you can attest to it in the current time.
Okay, yeah, that's what I was getting at. Really, is do we have to extrapolate backwards, or is it going to be based on current? But yeah, it sounds like we avoid that whole headache then. Just something I wondered.
Yeah, the idea is to avoid all of that, and then you're basically attesting to a combination of the latest block and that failure, wherever that failure may be, so that you can just continue to attest moving forward indefinitely.
Okay, cool. Yeah, that sounds a lot simpler than the current problem. Okay, so we're just a few minutes left. Unless anybody else has got anything on the table, I guess we could wrap up a few minutes early. Okay, all good. Thanks everyone for joining, and we'll see you next week.
Thanks all. Bye.
Have a nice day, everyone. Goodbye.
Bye.